Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if okay. So we're live on YouTube, but my LinkedIn Live is not working.
I feel like there's like a hiccup. There's always like 20 seconds and then it kicks in.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
There it is.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I was like, oh, I don't have it anymore. But no, it's just that. Okay. Beautiful. Hey, everybody who's joining us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. I'm Kerry Twigg. And how do I say your last name, Austin?
It's Belcak.
Belcak.
Yeah.
I always want to put a Z in there. Is that normal?
I think it got like westernized out over the centuries, if you will. My family's from like the Poland area.
Okay.
But yeah, now it's I think it's gotten westernized and it's just Belcak, which is it was a lot of fun growing up with, for sure.
Yes, but... I bet. I bet. Cool. All right. So we are talking about how to apply for jobs, or how to not apply for jobs, but do networking instead. Mm-hmm. And then we're talking about growing our network. But do you want to, I always love career coaches introducing themselves, because I think we can learn a lot by, no pressure, how people introduce themselves. So can you introduce yourself to people who don't know you, or who they already know you?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we can do a description, and then maybe how I might be a little bit different from some of the other career coaches or people out there. So I basically do two things. And Kerry, thank you so much for having me. First of all, we were talking, I'm so excited to finally, for us to connect. We've been going back and forth virtually for so long that I'm super excited to be here. But so I do two things. One, during the day, 9 to 5, I work at Microsoft, and I'm a director of partner development there. Been doing that for 5 years, and it's been a really amazing experience. And then outside of that, obviously, I do this career stuff. So I run a site called cultivatedculture.com, and our whole goal is to teach people how to land jobs they love without applying online. And that really stemmed from my experience job searching. When I graduated from college, I had a biology degree. I had a job in healthcare that was not so great by many measures. And I needed to make this transition. My goal was to get into tech, and it was not as easy as I had anticipated it being when I started. And I ran into a lot of roadblocks along the way using the traditional job search process. So I applied to a lot of places. And when I went to seek out advice, I went to people who we always go to, right? Our parents and our friends and career counselors. And they all kind of told me the same thing, which was tweak your resume, tweak your cover letter, keep applying. It's a numbers game. And that really didn't work for me. So I made it my mission to find a new approach that did work for me. And a lot of that basically stemmed from two core ideas, which was A, find a relationship, build a relationship, get a referral, and two, find a creative way to add your value. So that system helped me land my job at Microsoft. I also interviewed and got offers from Google and Twitter, and the rest is kind of history. I've been with Microsoft, and then I started this website. And we now have a community of 550,000 people who are leveraging these strategies to land jobs. So I think what's different about me, for better or worse, depending on what you're looking for, is that I don't have a background in recruiting per se. I haven't worked as a recruiter formally, but what I do have a lot of experience in is being a job seeker. And I also sit on the other side. I do a lot of the hiring, and I'm involved in a lot of those conversations for our team. And so I actually get to see what's happening on the other side, from the actual hiring managers and people who are interviewing these folks. And I see that on a regular basis. So that's a little bit about me and the reason we ended up connecting in the first place.
I love it. And so it's funny because it sounds like you never wanted to get into career coaching at all.
I wouldn't say that that's true. And okay. I think that, well, it's interesting because I always wanted to, my main driver was always wanting to start my own thing. And my true passion, I would say, is marketing. Like if you ask me to pick something that gets me out of bed in the morning, it's really marketing. And so, what is the vehicle for that? Well, the vehicle that I found was through career coaching. And that stemmed really from my experience. And that was something that I ended up being successful with in the sense of my own job search. I had a lot of people coming and asking me how I did it. And so I saw this as an opportunity to start my own thing and to really kind of have an opportunity to get out there and be a marketer. And so I would say that that's my true passion. But what I didn't realize at the beginning, which is something that you talk about a lot and something that you post about a lot, the stories and the impact that you actually have when you do work with people and they get that job, and you see what they go through and you see what their life is like after. That's just so gratifying. And that's not something that I ever anticipated when I started. So I would absolutely say that that is something that, motivates me to continue. Absolutely the combination now. But yeah, if you asked me 6 years ago what I was passionate about, I don't think career coaching would have been on the list.
Right. Okay. And do you do you think you'll always be in it?
That's a good question. A lot of people have like 5, 10, 20-year plans in this whole thing. And I think what I've realized, and especially with everything going on right now, like it's really hard to plan beyond a certain point. Yeah. And so I really look at the next year, like what do I want to be doing over the next 12 months? And then I do reassess as we go. But I just think it's really hard to say, here's what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, because if I look back on the last 5 years, 5 years ago, I wasn't working at Microsoft. I didn't have this business. I was't interested in careers. And now here we are. So a lot can change.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm kind of like, I'm coaching people, and this, like the story stuff that's the stuff I love. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that the career, and we'll talk career coaching. And if you're looking for a job, I still like you, anyone watching, but I'm finding it a little, and maybe it's like COVID, but I'm finding it a little exhausting talking about, not with people, but I think it's in the marketing of it, it feels like people still want to know the basics. And I'm like, oh, I want to talk about something else. Mm-hmm. Do you ever have that feeling, or no?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be honest, I would say, coaching is more of so I like to look at the things that I do as sort of energy creators and energy drainers, if you will. Yeah. And I'm a very, very big energy person. And I really try to focus on things that give me energy. And so writing a LinkedIn post or doing a LinkedIn Live with you, these types of things give me energy. Yeah. One-on-one coaching tends to drain my energy. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy doing it, especially, with the right people and focusing on the right things. But I definitely have been making a shift to try to do the one-to-many advice model, just because that is something that gives me more energy. And when I have more energy, I have more to give to other people. So I totally understand where you're coming from there. And that's something that I've been working on as well. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I think we have in the comments, people are like, they love the idea of a 1-year plan. So that's fantastic. Okay. So I think the 2 topics that we promised we would talk about, and then we'll take questions. So if people have questions, just ask them and we'll get to them after we kind of talk these 2 things. And we're here, for everyone who tuned in, we're here for about another half hour. So this isn't a hour-long conversation. Do you have to take time? Like, is this like your lunch break at work, or you just have flex hours?
No, I have, so I work in sales, and I sort of, I don't have as many meetings, I think, as other people internally. And so I can be a little bit more flexible with my schedule. And that's, a very lucky position to be in. So yeah, I had lunch earlier, and then I blocked off this time for you.
When I had a full-time job, I would have to book, there was a sick room. So you'd go when you were sick. And so I would book the sick room and be there and hope no one was really sick to do any kind of call at work, right? Because it was a government job with no freedom. So if you can imagine me in government.
No, and that's a lot of people's setup, and that doesn't always make it easy to take calls or do things outside of work. But I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift away from that, I hope. So flexibility is key for sure.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I have my own ideas about how to get a job without actually applying for it. But I feel like that's kind of the thing. Is that the thing you're most known for? I feel like it is.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, so how do you like to do it? When you share this information, do you like to do tips or steps? But how would somebody who's just grossed out about applying or tired and doesn't want to work on a resume, how might they get a job? And I'd love to hear your take, and then I'll share my take.
For sure. And I'm really excited to hear yours as well. So for me, I think that some context is important. A lot of people come to me and say like, well, Austin, should I never ever apply for a job online? And the answer is no. Like, online applications are part of the process. But I think the big mistake that I see people making is their allocation of time. So when we look at the data, and I share this data and everybody's like, what's your source? And it's really, there's no peer-reviewed scientific evidence that I've come across in the job search world in general. And we kind of work off of surveys and data that is out there. And so what the data shows is, when you apply online, you have about a 2% chance of getting in the door. And that's a bit of a sliding scale. As the company gets bigger or like higher in caliber, the percentage gets lower. And so if you're going after some of these larger companies or whatever, you just have a very low chance of getting in the door. That 2% is an average. So that's everybody from Google to, the small business that's right across the street from me here. Yeah. So that's a very low percent shot. And 75% of people are using those online portals to get to basically job search. That's their primary method. Right. So the vast majority of job seekers are spending most of their time on this channel that only has a 2% chance of success. Yeah. But if you look at where the hires are coming from, like if they're not coming from online apps, where are they coming from? And the data just shows that it's referrals. And the conservative estimates I've seen are that around 40% of hires are coming from referrals. I've seen them as high as 80%. And I really think that range depends on the industry, the company. Some companies are more focused on referrals than others. So it is hard to have a specific number that you can blanket across everything. But the point is, only 7% of applicants are referrals. So a very small percentage of applicants are competing in this space where there is a much higher chance of success. Yeah. And so instead of spending 80 to 90% of your time applying online, which I think is what most job seekers do. They tweak their resume, they tweak their cover letter, they're constantly refreshing job boards, they're going between job boards. Instead of doing that, we need to get really good and efficient at, you have your master resume, let's say, and then you know exactly what you need to do to tailor that for a specific role. Yeah. And you spend maybe 10 to 15% of your time creating that online application and getting it in the door. And then you go and you spend 80 to 90% of your time working to build those relationships, and also working to find creative ways to illustrate your value and clarify your value. So that's the context. And I think I have more steps, but I'll stop there. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I agree. I'm like, and you talked about energy, and I'm really big into like how lately I've been really like, how you feel in your job search matters, right? So if you're spending all your time just like looking at a computer and entering information and tweaking and questioning if you're putting the right thing, and like what system are they scanning and does it get read? Like, I just think about like what kind of energy you're having. Like, unless you're taking lots of walks or doing like push-ups in between, that just feels like that's really draining. Yep. And you're more prone to like get depressed and lose hope and just like settle than if you can job search doing the things that you love. So I tell people to figure out like what makes you awesome, like what's really special about you, and then look at those skills and then use those skills to land a job. Right. So if and I do, and you've like seen my stuff, I think, but I do it through like the career cards, right? So the writing a story a day, looking at things that make you happy at work, bringing it down to like 3 or 4 things. And so like for me, the things that make me happy is helping people, building programs, and solving problems, right? And helping people and solving problems are a little bit different. And then my 4th kind of bonus is I love to be delightful. So when I was looking for work, instead of thinking about applying, I just went, how can I help people? How can I maybe build a program or offer to build a program? How can I solve the problems? And how can I be delightful for the people who want to hire me? And then I started to model that so that my brand and my story came before like anything else. And yeah, I need to have, if I'm going for like a job, like having a resume that also backs that up is important. But that like the portal's not going to work. And I also know that I wasn't having good luck just sending out a resume. But when it was a resume and someone knew me, and then they talked about me and they saw like a tinge of me, they're like, then they were sold, right? So a resume wasn't really selling me, and the best jobs were never advertised, right? Like, so for the Microsoft job, was that advertised?
Yeah, so that one that one was advertised, and it was actually essentially, well, the way that it worked was a recruiter initially reached out to me for a role, and I got in the door through that recruiter, but that role ended up not working out. So they hired somebody else for it internally, but I talked to people and I built relationships, and so I actually think one of the mistakes people make is they go through an interview process and they don't get the job, and they're like, well, I'm never going to see those people again. And I viewed it the opposite way. I had a chance to talk to these people for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I considered them to be in my network. So then when more stuff popped up, I had these people to lean on. I also had some information from that original loop, as we call it at Microsoft. And so I leveraged that to get back in the door, the second time around. And so to your point, it was already knowing people and finding that way to sell myself too.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think I can't think of a job that I landed without knowing someone and without dropping a name. Like, even if I did apply, like if I even had the resume, like I'm not Microsoft level.
You told me
what
here,
they would
absolutely.
do. Yeah. Like lots of people from Microsoft follow me and like and share my work, but I'm like, I don't know what I would do there, like chief, I don't know, energizer or something.
There are those roles, but not to say like Microsoft level or whatever, like that's maybe right for some people, but that may not be right for others. So I was having a conversation with somebody who I met on LinkedIn yesterday, and she's a marketer, and she asked me why I didn't do marketing at Microsoft. And I said, going back to what I talked about a few minutes ago, like working as a marketer for Microsoft would be very different than marketing myself and cultivated culture. I don't think I would actually enjoy, I love marketing. It's my passion. I don't think I would enjoy being a marketer at a massive company, simply because of the red tape and the brand guidelines and, all these other people. Like, I really like experimenting and testing and trying new things and kind of pushing the envelope and using my voice. And I wouldn't be able to do that. And so I think that one of the big mistakes too, for a lot of people, and this goes back to your whole piece on getting that clarity in your story and your values, a job at Google is not the dream job for everybody. There could be a dream job.
I have a story. Yeah.
Right across the street at this small business that I'm staring at. That could be somebody's dream job. And a dream job is less like, and I think you've posted about this, like you don't necessarily, and I may be butchering your quote, so please correct me, but like you don't believe in like a dream job. And I would tend to agree with that because, there are dream jobs potentially, but overall, like what constitutes a dream job for most people isn't necessarily true. I think a lot of people, if you actually ask somebody to define their values, like what do you value, and be specific about it. I don't think many people could do that. They would say like, I want a good team, or I want to be doing work that like makes me happy. But like, what does making you happy mean? Or what is a good team? How do you define a good team? And I don't think a lot of people can go to that next level. And it's so important to do that work because otherwise, one, it opens up more opportunities. When all these people are like, I don't know what job I want, maybe I'll just go apply at Google. Google may not be right for them. And then on top of that, it's also really hard. We talk about energy. It's really hard to be energized when you have no idea what gets you energized or what you should be energized about. And so, but I want to hear your story.
Well, I just had a client and she applied, she got, someone reached out. It was through someone she had worked with. I had a big interview at Google. One person talked about like what the culture was going to be like. And we were like prepping and really excited. And you interviewed at Google, right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, so they're like, well, the first interview, they're like 80% of the people fail. It's like what they tell everyone, which is just an awful thing to tell somebody. and so she passed that, and she passed the second level, and then she got to a meeting with these two people who had to make a decision, and they just like they played the game of like tough guy and gave her no feedback.
Yeah.
And she's all about people, like, and she can work with really difficult people, but they were giving her nothing, right? And it came down to like, you know, she felt okay about it. When she was like, I don't think it's a dream job. I don't think I want to work for a company that's how they test people. And I was like, that's huge. Like that's a huge thing to know about yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like that's my Google story. I had a dream job. Why would I thought? Because I had a job with the government, and everyone, like when I was coaching before, so I worked as a career coach at this HR firm, and almost all my clients were like, I want a lad for the government because you can get a pension. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's like what I should do. So I landed this job, like full-time government job. And I think I knew like the second day that it was like, this is not my dream. And I was like, okay, but the pension, right? And I think it was that job within like 3 days, people were asking me like, are you still coaching? So I'm like, oh yeah, I am. So I was able to leave after a couple of years, but it's funny. And then I had to evaluate like what made me think that was a dream, because nothing, like it didn't use my favorite skills. It wasn't my favorite environment. Like maybe a pension was a dream for everybody else, but it wasn't a dream for me, right?
Especially hard to stick it out for that long when you hate it on day 2, right? Like
the
like year 30 or 25 or something, you're like, okay, we have 1 way to go.
Yeah. So the things that kept me, if anyone's stuck in a job that they hate, the way I dealt with it was it was 4 kilometers from my house. So I could run there and back. So I could get my 8 kilometers done, like, you know, and I did it, I think 3 times a week, and they had a shower. They had exercise classes in the afternoon. So I would take like 2 classes during the week. They had a meditation room. So I just filled it up with all these bonus like things and I worked with amazing people. Like the people made it doable. But I wasn't a good employee. Okay. We have 15 minutes. My second question, because we promised we'd talk about it, is how do you go about growing your network when you don't know anybody at the company or even in the sector? How do you meet people?
Yeah, so there's a great Chris Rock quote out there that I really, really like. And for people who don't know, Chris Rock is a comedian, pretty successful, been around for a while. But when he was starting, you know, as most of us do when we're starting, we kind of do what we have to do. So he would have these, you know, cars that were on their last legs that he would drive to gigs. And a lot of times they would break down, and this is kind of his quote, but he said, you know, I would have these cars, they would break down on the side of the highway. And when I got out of the car and put my hand up, nobody stopped. They just kept driving. But if I got out and I started pushing my car, other people would pull over and they would start pushing with me. And so he said, if you want help, start by helping yourself, because people like to see that. And that's something that I found several years ago and has always stuck with me, because I truly have found that it's so much easier to connect with people when you are doing things for yourself. So what does that mean? Well, it could be, you know, really any number of things. And this goes back to the energy piece and, you know, what you're excited about. Thinking about things that you enjoy. You know, do you enjoy writing, or do you enjoy creating videos or building things or designing things or whatever it is? And then just start to put some of that out there. I know job seekers who I've spoken to who started a podcast, and they would just bring people on the podcast at these companies that they wanted to work with. And it's so easy to get somebody on in a conversation when you have a podcast, right? Versus saying, hey, I need a job. Or posting on LinkedIn. I've seen so many amazing people just take the leap and start, you know, they press publish on 1 and then 2 and then 3. And now all of a sudden they're telling me, well, I'm connecting with people and I'm getting messages from people. And that same person, that marketing person that I referenced earlier, she started on LinkedIn not too long ago, and she got her new job through her posts on LinkedIn. And so, amazing. Yeah. So what I would say is, I think the big mistake that people make is in relationship building and networking is people tend to be takers instead of givers. And they also tend to use what I call a me mindset. So they reach out and the outreach is about them. So here's my resume, or you work there and I want a job there. Can you give me advice? And we need to flip that on its head. We need to make the outreach about the other person. We need to add value to them. I like to view relationships sort of as like a social bank account, if you will. So if you want something, referral, introduction, whatever, let's say it costs like 20 social dollars. If you try to make that withdrawal at the beginning with $0 in the bank, you're going to overdraw your account just like a normal bank account. But if you work to create, those little deposits in forms of value or whatever it is every day, you'll get up to that $20 amount, and then you can make the ask safely. And so how do we do that then? Because a lot of people say, well, I don't have a lot to offer. One of the easiest ways you can start creating value is just by spinning up something on your own, starting a project or sharing some content or becoming a connector. Who can I introduce to somebody else? Or at the very least, just recognizing somebody for something that they've done. That's been for the people that I work with who, it takes a while to create a podcast or start a brand or whatever. And if you're going to work towards that, awesome. But for me, if you're starting from scratch, the easiest thing you can do is recognize somebody for something. Hey, Austin, I saw you used to work in healthcare and now you work for Microsoft. Like, that's a crazy transition. I imagine it couldn't have been easy. Like, I'd love to learn more about that. Or, hey, Kerry, I saw you worked in this public sector job and now you have your own career coaching business. I imagine that couldn't have been easy. I'd love to learn more. Making it about the other person and getting them on the phone and kind of delaying your gratification, that's really where the magic tends to happen. And then it's an everyday type of thing. Like the last thing I'll add, and then I'll pause to get your thoughts, Kerry. But what I actually have a sheet that's based off of this concept called the Dream 100, and mine is more like the Dream 30. But I would just have a running list of 30 people that I want to stay in contact with. And so I basically, that works out to be like one person a month. But I do something for them, and then I mark the date that I do it, and I filter that column by oldest to newest. And so the person that I've interacted with the longest time ago is first on the list. And so that just keeps me, adding value to that person. And then I know, I can go back to them and make an ask if I need to, because I've been adding value to them. And so my point is not, you can have that Dream 30 or 100 if you want, but really my point is, if you make a habit out of how can I give more than I take, how can I do that on a daily basis? That's really where the magic starts to happen. That's where you're going to start seeing more of these relationships come to fruition. Yeah.
Maybe we share a brain. I think you're more data than me. Yeah, but absolutely. After years, I just asked my favor, like after year, like to big people. So, and for me, it was like building relationships with people and like giving and sharing advice. There's a question in the comments. Someone's like, how do you leave that me? I think there's a typo with the mindset. And even if you don't have any value to add to the other person. And I think that often we think that value is like, oh, we're going to get them business or we're going to get them this. But sometimes like the value is just like letting the person know that they're making a difference, right? Sometimes it's making a comment and then making their post bigger. Sometimes it's making them feel good because they're talking, if they check you out and they see that you've been working in an area too and you respect their stuff. Like sometimes it's an ego boost. So it doesn't have to ever be immeasurable. In terms of value. So I think every human, you add value by being, but by not asking to take their time in a way that might drain them. So that, like, I always see it as like, if I'm at a networking event, I don't want anyone to see me and be like, the last time I spoke to her, she drained me. Yeah. Right. I want people to go, the last time I hung out with her, she made me feel amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, I went to TED Women a couple of years ago. My friend was speaking. I was like her coach and I got to go for free. And so I'm in a room with people who had paid like, I don't know what they pay. I think like $4,000 to be there. Right. Nice. So like all these power women who would pay $4,000 for a networking event. Right. And what I did was like, I'm just going to pretend I'm the host. So like not really, but I went every every person who came to this event came here because they want to be inspired, they want to meet other people. And so and they want to probably share ideas. So I'd ask people why they came, what they were into, and have this engaging conversation that they would have checked the box off, right? Like of, hey, I got to share an idea and I got to feel inspired, and I could offer that just even as a guest there. So I think you can do the same thing for LinkedIn. I always say, like, think about what your story is, where you want to work, like figure out all that stuff first, and then start to share, so that when you reach out to the people, if they check you out, you have a history, and you don't just look like a brand new beginner with anything. And the content doesn't need to be polished. But it does, like, even if you're sharing articles that are relevant to your interest area, that's going to look way better than having nothing, right? And then asking, hey, can you help me out? When, it's like your story, right? There's no evidence of pushing the car. So everyone listening, push that.
Push your car.
Push your car. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But my big ones that I was building. So do you know David Burkus?
I don't think so.
Okay, so David Burkus is like he wrote a great book, which you might enjoy, called Friend of a Friend. I think it's like Friend of a Friend of a Friend. And it's all about the science of networking. So I feel like you would like it, because
I'd be all over it. That's right up my alley.
Yeah, like, it's a fantastic book. So when he wrote that book, I made a video. Like, the first thing I did as I don't think I was even popular, but I made a video of books that I thought were inspiring. So I just made a video, and I was like, oh, David book, what I love about this book. And then I said what I loved and tagged him in it. And that is a value add, right? Yeah. And so he saw that, and then he wrote to me, and he's like, thanks for that. I hadn't been thinking about doing LinkedIn videos. And then he started to make all these videos, and it boosted his business. Then I reached out about something else. Oh, I think I put him on top 10 books to buy for career job seekers or something. And he was like, thank you. So we've been interacting back and forth for a couple of years, right? He hasn't asked me for anything. I haven't asked him, but I've been giving, pushing, and helping myself. And now I wrote a book, and I need people to endorse it. And I wrote to him. I was like, hey, can you endorse my book? And he's like, absolutely, Kerry. He knows who I am. He knows that I've been doing the work. He's happy to read it. So it's off. I hope he likes it, and he says nice things. But I didn't make that ask to someone I didn't know, and someone who I wasn't, pushing the car and also stroking their ego.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you delayed your gratification, right? And I think what's crazy is sort of, once you understand this, it's almost like you get slapped in the face. It's so obvious, but everybody's just ready and waiting for the ask. They know that if there's a networking call or whatever, they join, they're probably like, okay, when's the pitch coming, or when's the question? Yes. And if you literally just send an email or have a call and you end with, thanks a lot, would love to keep in touch, no ask, you would be surprised at how much that progresses your relationship. And if you do that twice or 3 times, it's honestly amazing what can come out of that. Yeah. And I would say it's almost just genuinely caring about the other person too. Value could be, I already knew you had a book coming out, and I'm very excited for it. But let's say I didn't know that, and I hear you say that on this podcast. Maybe I go pre-order a copy, or try to figure out a way to, get it to my team at work, or try to find somebody to connect you with who you could be on their podcast or whatever. And that's easy for me to say, right? Being who I am. But even for somebody who isn't, doesn't have a following or whatever it is, even just, setting a note in their calendar, hey, let me follow up with Kerry in a couple months and ask how the launch is going, and if there's anything I can do or whatever it is. Even just following up is a huge value add, because it shows that you care.
Yeah.
The one other one that I would add is, people always ask me like, how do you find a mentor? And I'm sure you get the same question. And people seem to think that mentorship is like, I'm like, Kerry, would you be my mentor? And you're like, yes, I will. And like, now we're officially like mentor mentee. And like, that's never how it happens. And instead it's more so like, if I just ask you like some questions, or we have some conversations or interactions, like, that relationship forms. And so a lot of times people will ask for advice. Like they get on the phone with you, they ask, and then they disappear, like never to be heard from again.
Yes.
And if you literally just report back and you're like, hey, I took your advice and here's what happened, thanks so much. What's the next piece of advice? I call this the advice triangle, but you sort of create this cycle where you open the door for the next piece of advice, but at the same time, you're proving, one, that you're somebody who takes action, and two, like, because everybody else runs away with the advice, when you come back and say, hey, I took your advice and here's what came out of it, can I have more advice? The other person is going to say like, wow, this person took my advice. I'm probably going to be willing to share more advice, better advice, deeper advice. And every time we go back and forth, we're building investment on both sides of the relationship. And there isn't really an ask there. So even just positioning somebody as a mentor, not by asking them, will you be my mentor, but by asking for advice or proactively listening to what they say and then taking action and reporting back, like that's a way for anybody to add value no matter what you've done in the past.
Yeah, I teach that too. And it's like, yeah, like I had a job seeker and she had hooked up with, she wants to work in sustainability, and she first like got this person accepted her connection, and she's like, okay, should I ask her, get on the call and we'll talk about sustainability? And I was like, no. I'm like, just ask her what her favorite book is. Like just a light ask, right? So someone in the questions was asking like any advice for introverts who have a hard time with in-person. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I would just start. You can even start. You don't even have to do in person, right? Like I'm an introvert, and no one thinks it, but I'm like, I'm like, I have energy and I like people, but I'm shy, right? And I like other people to have it. So, so she wrote she was going to ask, get her on the call, and I was like, no, just ask her her favorite book. And so she did, and I'm like, now read the book. And then go back to her and tell her your favorite part of it, right? So you can have something to like talk, and then go, hey, do you have another recommendation or someone else I should talk to? And then you can make the asks like incrementally a little bit bigger because you've built a relationship. And yeah, you've proven that you've done that follow-up. We're at time. I felt like you had something that you wanted to add to that introverts thing. So can we end on what's your advice for introverts, especially in person?
Yeah, I just posted about this like 2 days ago, literally how to network when you're an introvert. And I think the people think that networking needs to be a 30-minute face-to-face phone call or an event where you shake hands. And that's not true. And it goes back to like, if people take away one thing from this live, I think it's go write down, make a list, 2 columns. One column is, these are the things that give me energy, and these are the things that drain my energy. And then everything that you do, whether it's networking or finding a job or starting a business or anything, like take that and put it in the frame of an energy creators. How do you make this thing happen by doing things that create energy? And it's really those bite-sized little pieces. Like instead of asking somebody, how'd you get into sustainability? What's your favorite sustainability book? Great, let me go read it, or just skim it and pull out an excerpt, and then send it back to them. And like now all of a sudden we have the conversation going. So I think introvert, extrovert, whatever it is, like layers, and just finding, not about getting the job in one email or one conversation.
Yeah. How do you think our relationship started?
I know it started on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But I don't remember specific. Was it me commenting on your post? I feel like
I don't know. I'm very interested because someone might be like, how did 2 career coaches? I'll say like, we're doing this because someone else commented on that I should do a live with you. And I was like, yeah, it would be great. And you're like, yeah, me too. And then we just set it up. Yeah. But I wonder, I'm just going to look if we have a history, and then I'm going to let you go. Do you have a minute?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And while you're looking, like I remember when I got started on LinkedIn, like you were like top voice, all this other stuff. And I went and found people that I wanted to emulate, and I started commenting on their posts. And that was 2 years ago. And then recently, like you had your book come out, and I'm very excited to read it. But I pre-ordered it, and like, I don't know if reviews are up and running, but I would go leave a review. And that's just when you think about like, this is the first time we've talked like face to face. Yeah,
I know.
We're here like we have the same brain, and so if we're also both introverts, but and people are shocked when I say that too. But like, this doesn't have to be. It's not like I emailed you and was like, Kerry, let's get a 30-minute Zoom call on the calendar to talk about career coaching. Like, it happened over time in small layers, and now here we are. And not to say that it has to take 2 years for something like that to happen, but more so, you know, if we are both kind of looking at each other and what's Austin doing, what's Kerry doing, how can I help, not making an ask. And then eventually, you know, this isn't even an ask, it's good for both of us.
Exactly.
But then, you know, if you ask me to promote your book, you know, I'm happy to do it. And, you know, maybe down the road, if I have something, I send it to you. Like, that's just the way that things form. And so I think this is great, because this has been 100% virtual. I mean, it's still a virtual relationship with what we're doing, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell if anyone's interested, this is our relationship.
Uh-oh.
So I asked you to be part of my network. Because I wrote to you, well, so if you want like secrets into how I network, I went well with extra L's and too many periods after it. I said, well, we may as well connect if we're going to talk about each other in comments. You seem like a good one.
I like it.
Then you accepted, and I said, woot woot, thanks for accepting. You were like, I thought we were already connected. So like, I thought we were already friends. You asked me a question about teaching at a university and how to get a job teaching at a university. I gave you a very long-winded answer.
I appreciated it. I remember that. Yeah.
You thanked me for it. And then that was like April 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then in September, I was like, hey, what dates work for you for a live? Like, but in between that, like, so I think a lot of times people think it's formal, but we were just being ourselves in our private chat. And then at the same time, like commenting on each other's posts, right? And not seeing it as a competition, right? Because there's people who are way better off working with you, especially if they like data steps, right? And then there's people who are way better for me if they love like talking lots about their stories, right? So not that we both can't do those bits, but I think I think that everybody can have the right career coach, and the more that we collaborate and kind of share how we do it, the better people find the best one for them. So yeah. Beautiful.
And I love, just to go off of that, like, I know like with something like a resume where there's so much advice out there, like there isn't one resume or one person who writes the best resumes for every situation, and therefore that's the person you need to work with. It's really like, who do you jive with? And that's where the content creation comes in. Like, people read my content and I'm very like, like this is the strategy, these are the steps. And I'm much less like, let's talk about your story and tell me about it. But you're so good at that. And so like but two different people will jive with both of those things. And so it's such a personal choice. But that's the same thing with your career in these companies, right? Like, you thought this would be a dream job with the pension, and then it wasn't. And for me, like when I was interviewing at Google, just to end on this note, like everybody kept telling me like, you don't have enough experience, you're not good enough, you're not going to make it. And I kept like pushing back on them. And I interviewed there for 6-7 months. And my process with Microsoft was like 6 weeks. And everybody there was like, your freelancing experience and your background is so cool. Like, that's the type of person we want to bring on. And then when it came time to like choose, like even at the final offer stage, like Google has this packet thing and they're like, we're not sure if your GPA is going to like make sure that you get through. And Microsoft was like, here's your offer. Like, we're going to give you a really great salary. And I was like, this is a no-brainer. And before I had interviewed at Microsoft, I actually told my wife, like, I can't interview at Microsoft because I'll ruin my chances of working at Google. And then like fast forward to the end of the process, and it totally flipped on its head. And so it's all about understanding, like, you need to be clear about your story and your values, which is why the work you do is so important. Because if you're not, you run the risk of jumping into a situation that seems like one thing on the outside and is something totally different on the inside. And then guess where you're at?
hiring another career coach because you got to do the job search again, or you're doing it yourself. And either way, it's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, boy. It's really good. I think we can be friends now.
Officially.
Beautiful. So thanks for everybody for coming. Thank you, Austin, for joining me on the live. It's been really, really fantastic. Follow him if you're not already doing that, but it's been really good, and enjoy the rest of your days and your weeks. Okay. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks. Bye.